they work.
This is Blair Durham with Black Wall Street Today, your media hub for all things Black entrepreneurship, politics, news, and events in Hampton Roads and beyond.
And now, here's your host, Blair Durham.
Greetings.
Stay locked in.
So I'm joined now by Brother Minister Zumbi Shawala. He's the founder of the Liberty Hall Media Group, the author of G.O.A.T, the Gospel Afronomics Theology, and he's presently developing a goal-setting program entitled MVP Goals. Brother Minister has built a following through an online radio show called From Mind to Market from 2007 to 2012 on LIB Radio, and that's libradio.com. He now serves as a board member on the newly formed Nat Turner Library Foundation. As a business and financial thought leader, Brother Minister's philosophy is that for people to become fiscally responsible for their lives, they must be empowered personally with the proper tools, value systems, and mindset to solve their financial problems. He also believes in transformation as opposed to reformation on a personal and professional level. So to achieve something never achieved, a person has to become something he or she has never been before. In his role as an Afronomicist and Afrofuturist, Brother Minister addresses the economic issues of the urban and hip-hop communities, as well as the African world community from an empowerment position. He feels that these communities have the right and obligation to empower and enrich themselves to fulfill their economic destinies through microenterprise, entrepreneurship, and community angel investing. Brother Minister is presently a doctoral candidate for metaphysical studies at the University of Metaphysics in Sedona, Arizona. He's a 2004 graduate of Sage College of Albany in Albany, New York, with a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies. And he also received a bachelor's degree in metaphysical science in April of 2012 from the University of Metaphysics, where he received his ordinance as a minister of metaphysical science. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir? What would you like to be called?
Brother Minister is good.
Brother Minister. Okay.
Yes.
Never seen those two kind of side by side like that, but I'm happy to honor your wishes, and I really appreciate you being here. Let's get into this gospel of Afronomics theology. I'm especially curious about what it means to be an Afronomicist.
Okay. That when we study economics, we tend to study economics in a vacuum and not from an African-centered paradigm. I've noticed a lot of my contemporaries and peers, they've read Think and Grow Rich, they've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, etc. But there's been very few books that have really addressed our economic issues from an African-centered perspective. So I decided to take on that challenge. I decided to study our predecessors who did take on that challenge.
And so far, I've heard you articulate about the primary challenge around a lot of the most kind of popular works in the economic space, how they don't really address the very unique predicament where we find ourselves as people of African descent.
Yes. So when I decided to write G.O.A.T, it took me 3 years to write, but I pulled on the last 22 years of my personal experience in business as a consultant / coach and as a researcher to find out what do we need now, particularly now being in a post-pandemic climate. There are issues that we need to be clear about. I've always said, if you are Black in America, you should already be entrepreneurial minded, not necessarily entrepreneurial. And what this pandemic has shown us is we need to ensure that we have multiple streams of income, and those streams are not only recession proof, but pandemic proof as well, because job security has become the biggest lie in our society today.
Yeah, agreed. I am a practitioner in that regard, working in the space to empower our community to improve upon that entrepreneurial inclination, right? By really understanding the mechanisms in place, the resources available, so that they can grow and scale their businesses. So I couldn't agree more. So MVP goals. I assume that this is goal setting around entrepreneurship as well.
Yes, actually, it can be applied to any facet of your life, professionally or personally. What MVP stands for is mission, vision, and purpose. My theory is the reason why people succeed or fail in achieving and accomplishing their respective goals is that they do not have a clearly defined mission, vision, and purpose for their lives, professionally as well as personally.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So critical.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, right? These are basic concepts. Yet if we don't adhere to them, it's almost like a guaranteed calamity. I want to ask you this question. How important is it for the Black community writ large to have a unified understanding of these concepts? In other words, is it enough for individuals to have goals, or is there a point at which, for our community, there has to be kind of a coming together? Is there a need for a centralized leadership and organization in that regard? Or is it enough for individuals to understand the value of mission, vision, purpose?
I think it's more of a both and as opposed to an either or.
Okay.
Let's use China as an example. Mao Zedong came to power in 1949. And once he came to power, there was a thing called the 100-year plan, where by the year 2049, China already had an idea or had a vision of where it wanted to be as being a global superpower. And one of those things that they focused on was being an agricultural power. Now, if we were to take that blueprint and place it on African people, let's say African people in the US, we have to begin to shift how we look at leadership. In the past, it was based on what I call a messianic, charismatic individual, kind of like the one. And what usually happens is once that individual is removed, then the movement itself falls apart, i.e. Marcus Garvey, when he was deported back to Jamaica. The UNIA basically fell apart because that charisma and having that messianic leader dealing with the day-to-day operations was no longer there. One of the things that I do recommend is to go from having a people-oriented type of leadership to a system-oriented type of leadership, where no matter what happens to the individual, the system is there to where someone can step in and continue keeping the ball rolling. Yeah.
Yeah, and I asked that question. It's kind of a catch-22 because there is such a diversity of perspective within the Black community. It's almost like, well, along what lines will we unify, right? Are we going to unify along the lines of race? Well, if so, are we even all in agreement about what we want to be called, right? Because we know there's diversity there. Okay, well, maybe we can't unify along those lines. Are we going to unify along the lines of some sort of shared spirituality? I doubt that could be accomplished either, right? So I just wonder if we're really going to come together under some kind of common banner or leadership or whatever, how realistically could that be accomplished, especially given, the examples that you shared, right? And how easy it is for us to become kind of enamored by personality and, even think about the various religious leaders of today and the way in which they lead and so forth. It's a fascinating conversation for sure.
Sure. And one of the things, and I was talking with a friend about this last week, I think there's also, when you want to talk about unification, I always try to look at unification along what are the common basic needs of the people. I have 7 questions that I say that for any Black person who seeks to run for office, local, county, state, or federal, you as the potential voter should ask these individuals 7 basic questions. Okay. Number 1, how will African people be fed? Number 2, how will African people be clothed? Number 3, how will African people be sheltered? 4, how will African people be educated? 5, how will African people be employed? 6, how will African people be protected? And then 7, how will African people gain access to affordable, quality health care? And that should be able to cut across, all schools of thought, all political, religious, fraternal, civic ideologies. So I think if we boil it down to what are our basic human needs, then I think we're able to create a plebiscite where when you come through the buffet line, there's something in that buffet that you want to eat.
Right. I mean, and it makes sense. It makes sense. When we focus on needs being met, right? Maslow, as it were. Yeah, I mean, that should create enough common interest for people to come together. It should. But, I'm certain you have seen and you understand that there's some definite healing that kind of needs to take place in order to ensure that we're even willing to work together. Various levels of negative impact brought on by, conditions that we've experienced that continue to play out, when we try to put together working relationships.
Right.
And so, I'm open. I'm here for the work.
Okay. And then there's also another thing that I talk about in my book. I've always said that when you look at any ethnic group, its economic philosophy is always rooted in a nucleus of culture, history, and spirituality. Okay, and I think that's another thing as African people that we need to look at. Culture is I guess you would say it's the mortar that puts the bricks together. And, like I said at the top of the conversation, culture is something that really needs to be emphasized. Okay. How do African people view things? Do we view things through our own eyes? Or are we using someone else's set of glasses to look at things? Okay. So I think we have to begin to ask ourselves, are we looking at things through our own 2 eyes? And are we consistently doing things that are in our highest and greatest good, where we're not making inappropriate decisions individually as well as collectively?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I look forward to a time where we are not our own worst enemy. I understand full well our potential, and even our capacity. No doubt we are brilliant, and I don't even say that from the vantage point of believing that somehow we're super brilliant because we're melanated. I don't subscribe to that necessarily, right? But, suffice it to say, like, even if we were just regular brilliant, we would still be brilliant. I look forward to the fullest manifestation of that. I do believe that our greatest capital is our relational capital. People do business with those that they know, like, and trust.
Right.
And so we want to, in my head, we want to focus on that economy which is, really creating something worth selling and then doing right by those that we're in business relationships with. And that will take care of so many things, right?
Oh, sure. In fact, one of the things that I've been an advocate on, I've really been studying this probably for the past 20 years. For African people, if you really want to get into an industry which has little to no barrier of entry, but unlimited revenue potential, is information marketing, or what we now call infopreneurship. Okay. Everybody is an expert in something. Okay. The question now becomes, how do you organize that information, package it, systematize it, and then finally monetize it? Okay. And I especially recommend it for those who are in service-oriented type businesses, whether you're a consultant, a coach, if you're a real estate agent, you're in the financial services, because right now information is really an emerging economy. And specifically in certain topics, areas, whether it's self-help, business, health and wellness, spirituality. So figure out how to take what you already know and convert it into a product or product line or a product and service line. Because like you said, we have brilliance. We just don't have the know-how to put that information together and make it to where it works for us. So for example, my book, I consider that my first info product. And from that book, I'm working on developing an online course and, other ancillary products that comes out of it. So if people can at least write a book, because the belief is everyone has at least one book inside of them.
Sure.
That one book can lead to other income earning opportunities.
Yep, I agree. Where can we get more information about your book? Can we find your book online as of now?
You can primarily order it through Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah. And go ahead. And I'm also working, hopefully, to have my website up and running by this summer. It's kind of been I guess you would say an up and down process, but that's in the works. I'm also working on my second book, which is what I call the Chicago Code. It's an African-centered approach to manhood. And basically, I've come up with, I guess you would say, 8 virtues of what I think African manhood should be in the 21st century and beyond. Like we had talked about before, everything has to come through an African-centered lens. I don't subscribe to the whole alpha, beta male. Where did that come from? And if I'm not mistaken, those words are used to describe animals. You see?
Very true.
So I don't get into that alpha. Yeah, I don't get into that alpha, beta male. Like I said, I think it's usually used more like for wolves. Mm-hmm. So we need to get off this low vibration animal science.
Agreed. Yeah. And certainly there needs to be a redefinition, right? To the extent that we can agree that the current output is not serving our interests. Thank you for that work. Is that articulated in the book, Gospel of Afronomics Theology, or elsewhere?
I touch on different aspects of it, and probably when I go into my next book about the Chicago Code, I talk about what real manhood is, that manhood is judged not by your consumption, but your production. Sure. There's a tribe in Africa, I think it's called the Sambaru tribe, where a young male, part of his crucible into manhood is to go out and hunt for wild game. He brings that game back home, presents it to his mother and grandmother. Now, that's a symbolic gesture. Meaning, one, mama, you no longer have to feed me because I have the capacity to feed the village. And then secondly, you will not see me in the kitchen eating from your pot anymore. So that's one aspect of manhood that we need to get straight. It's not about your consumption, but your production for large groups of people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Difficult. Again, I'm in the business of helping people to perfect their production capacity. And it's difficult. It's far easier to just participate and consume than it is to stop and really develop production capacity. I'm in wholehearted agreement, though, that's the direction that we have to move in, because otherwise the conversation about group economics is a limited one. We don't want to have to depend upon anything outside of the community, but we haven't developed yet the capacity to produce all of what our community would need. And it's like, how do we expect that to work? I chuckle because it keeps me sane, but it's a serious issue.
Yeah, it's a tall ask. Especially when, if you look back at Malcolm's Ballad or the Bullet speech, when he says we need a gospel of Black nationalism, the only thing he said is, look, we need to have total control over the social, political, economic, and cultural aspects of our community. Okay?
Yes.
If we can just start there, particularly with the culture and the economic components, then the other two will just fall into place. But it's really about gaining control over your culture and your economics, because, a lot of times we want to focus on politics so much to the expense, not realizing you can't have politics without an economic base, and you really can't have both without a strong cultural base.
Sure. Yeah, in agreement. In agreement. Gotta fix those pieces, have to fix.
Yeah, and like you said, because we're up against a clock, it's like we're having to do things simultaneously where we can't go in, do one and then the next one. Yeah,
we don't have the luxury of, let's build wealth for several hundred years. Okay, now it's now or never for all of it. And
right.
With the compressed timelines, it's a pressurized scenario. We're already dealing with the day-to-day travesty of being Black, on top of the trauma we inherited from our ancestors. It's just, it's tough. But I am still hopeful. Definitely not in politics, but just in that we can learn what we need to learn, and we can make the necessary changes.
Indeed.
Yeah. We're out of time. This has been great. I appreciate the dialogue and definitely appreciate your scholarship. I did find the book on Amazon. Give us the title once more for those that are wanting to find it there online. Okay.
The title is G.O.A.T. It's the Gospel of Afronomics Theology, a 21st century blueprint for Black economic power.
Excellent. I would say find it. Some brilliant concepts there. Sometimes myself and others may be off-put by names, titles, maybe just we don't quite understand all of the things. But I think the book is likely going to be relevant for any person of African descent that picks it up to read it. So I certainly, again, I want to thank you for your time, and I definitely would welcome you back to the show and to some of the other platforms that we have, some of the conferences that we produce. I would love to chat with you further.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I am so excited to welcome Mr. Les Brown.
The Federal Reserve said 3 weeks ago in St. Louis, stunningly, a white high school dropout, an ex-felon, somebody who's been in prison, and a black college graduate, no criminal record, and thousands of dollars in debt. That white high school dropout will create 3 times more wealth than that black college graduate. And so it speaks for itself that in order for us to make it, we have to be hungry. The racism, the things in place, part of the culture to hold us back, it's so pervasive. It got us going and coming. Some things we're aware of, most of the things we're not. But those people who succeeded, Frederick Douglass said, we won't get everything that we fight for, but everything we get, it will be a fight. You got to be hungry and find a way to win. There's mental resolve, a perpetual sense of optimism that some way, somehow, we're going to be able to figure this thing out and get through and be able to live a larger life.
Wow. Powerful. In wholehearted agreement, even thinking about Black Brand's journey and pivoting and hosting content online all year and translating this conference into a digital event. No doubt everything that you said rang true. I am noticing that you are sharing a ton of content on social media, following you on LinkedIn, just very much appreciative of your transparency with regard to your journey, and grateful to see you still at this work of inspiring us all.
Thank you so much. I tell you, at 75, I still got the fire.
Yeah, you do. You definitely do.
And I kid and play hairstyle. I got a
Yes. Look, I shared with my mother. I said, look, this is Les Brown. She said, it's Les Brown. I said, it's Les Brown with the high top. She loved it. I love it. I say, do your thing, sir.
Well, when you get 75, you can do that. My daughter, Serena, she graduated from Hampton. And yes, and so they have a great tradition there that I believe in very much. And I'm so excited to be a part of this virtual conference and what you're doing, because now more than ever, we need entrepreneurs. Now more than ever, people need to become aware of the fact that the 40-40 plan is gone, where you can go to college, graduate, and expect to get a job and work for 40 years and retire on 40%, which wasn't enough in the first place. That time is gone. And so people need what it is that you brand, what it is that you bring, how to brand themselves, and finding something that they love, where your heart is, there your treasure is also, that they can do, that they will be in a position to control their own personal economy.
Super excited. And listen, looking forward to talking next week. Some more great content coming your way. Thank you for tuning in to Black Wall Street today, where we're building minds, building connections, and forging the path ahead toward business success in the Black community.
Phenomenal. Stay with us online at Black Wall Street Today on Facebook and Black Wall Street Today on Instagram, and then follow us on Twitter as well at BWS Today. We look forward to talking again next week. Have a wonderful week. I have said, and I will continue to say, that the most important priority for the Black community is the Black community, not a particular political party.
Hey, yo, when I say black, you say what?